Hello my students, this is the continuation of the lecture on human reproductive system. Last time we discussed about the male reproductive system. Today we are going to talk about the female reproductive system. What are the functions of female reproductive system? The first major function is oogenesis, that is the production of female reproductive cell, the egg or ovum. And the other function is copulation or receive sperms from male into the vagina. Another function is production of female reproductive hormones. And the other major function is provide sites for the fertilization and also implantation of the zygote and the development of the embryo. It also acts as the birth canal during birth. So, each and every part of the system is adapted in order to fulfill these functions. So, we are going to talk about those structures. Let's say the components of female reproductive system. It is mainly consists of external genitalia, internal genitalia, and also some accessory organs. The main internal genitalia are ovaries. The accessory organs are uterus, uterine tubes, and vagina. Let's see about the structure of ovaries. It is the main internal genitalia which produce ova or eggs in female reproductive system. And there are two ovaries present in each female, so you can see that the whitish color ball in this image. Ovaries are held in place by several ligaments. Those are broad ligament, ovarian ligament or uterovarian ligament, and the suspensory ligament. So you can get an idea by looking at this image. The broad ligament is a section of peritoneum, the inner serous membrane of peritoneal cavity. The suspensory ligament anchors the upper region of the ovary to the pelvic wall. Blood vessels and nerves enter to the ovary, which goes through this ligament. And the ovarian ligament anchors the lower end of the ovary to the uterus. When we are talking about the tissues covering the outside of the ovary, the outermost layer is germinal epithelium. It is a cuboidal epithelium, an outer layer of simple epithelium. And the tunica albuginea is a fibrous layer which lies inside the germinal epithelium. The substance of the ovaries which lies inside the cover is called stroma. It is mainly divided into two main regions, the outer cortex and the inner medulla. There in the cortex, some sac-like bodies are embedded. These are called ovarian follicles. Each ovarian follicle consists of an immature egg or immature oocyte. The cells which are surrounding this immature oocyte is called follicular cells. These cells are important for the nourishment of the oocyte. So in this picture you can see the substance of the ovary is divided into two main parts, the cortex and the medulla. The cortex consists of two main types of tissues, stroma and the parenchyma. Stroma consists of connective tissues and stromal cells, while the parenchyma consists of large number of ovarian follicles in different phases. And the medulla of the ovary consists of some stromal cells and some connective tissues such as blood vessels. The cortex of ovaries contain primary oocytes. Then within ovaries they develop into secondary oocytes. These secondary oocytes are the eggs which are released by the ovaries. One secondary oocyte is released once a month. So the released secondary oocytes are taken up by the oviduct, or we call it uterine tube. It takes these oocytes towards the uterus. There are three main components of each tube, that is, infundibulum, ampulla, and isthmus. The infundibulum is the funnel-shaped free end of the uterine tube. It bears finger-like projections called fimbriae. Actually, this oocyte is released to the space from the ovaries. So, these free oocytes should be taken into uterine tube. The pulsating cilia on the fimbriae draw these free secondary oocytes into the uterine tube. The ampulla is the widest and longest region of the uterine tube. Fertilization of the oocyte by a sperm usually occurs here. The isthmus is the narrow region of the uterine tube whose terminus enters into the uterus. The wall of the uterine tube consists of three main layers. The outermost layer is the serosa. It is a serous membrane which lines the outside of the uterine tube. The middle one is the muscularis. It consists of two layers of smooth muscles. These smooth muscles are responsible for the generation of peristaltic contractions that help the propel of oocytes towards the uterus. That means when smooth muscles contract, the oocyte inside the tube is pushed forward towards the uterus. The innermost layer is the mucosa. Consists of ciliated columnar epithelial cells. The movements of the cilia is important for the forward movement of oocyte towards the uterus. There are some secretory cells in mucosa. These secretions lubricate the tube and also nourish the oocytes. Let's say the series of events which occur within the uterine tubes. First, the fimbriae takes the oocyte into the uterine tube. Then, with the help of cilia and peristaltic movements, the oocyte moves along the uterine tube. Within the ampulla, the sperm reaches oocyte and fertilization occurs. Fertilization takes place within 24 hours of ovulation. Ovulation is the release of ovum from ovary. Then the fertilized egg or the zygote reaches uterus about 7 days after ovulation. Let's see about the next part of the female reproductive system. That is the uterus, or in common term, it is the womb. The uterus is a hollow organ within which fetal development occurs. And it consists of three main parts: the fundus, the body, and the isthmus. The fundus is the upper region of the womb or the uterus where the uterine tubes join with the uterus. And the body is the major central portion of the uterus. The isthmus is the lower, narrow portion of the uterus. Isthmus is the term which is used to introduce a very narrow portion of any organ. So in this image you can see the fundus, the body, and the isthmus of the uterus. The next part of the female reproductive system is the cervix. It is the part which connects uterus with the vagina. The term cervix is that it is similar to the neck. The cervix is a narrow region at the bottom of the uterus that leads to the vagina. So, the inside of the cervix there is a canal which is called cervical canal. The cervical canals open to the uterus above through the opening called internal os, and below to the vagina through the opening called external os. The cervical mucus secreted by the mucosal layer of the cervical canal serve to protect against bacteria entering into the uterus from the vagina. So you can see this mucus layer prevents entering bacteria into the uterus, which comes from the outside of the body through the vagina. So in this picture, you can see the connection between the uterus and the vagina, that is the cervix, the neck-like part. So there are two openings. The upper opening, the cervical canal, opens into uterus through the internal os. The cervical canal opens into vagina. The lower opening is the external os. As we know that sperms come through vagina first into the uterus, then it enters into uterine tube. If after the ovulation an oocyte is available within the uterine tube for fertilization, the mucus which is secreted from the uterus becomes thin and slightly alkaline. This promotes the passage of sperms into the uterine tube. But if there is no oocyte in the uterine tube, the mucus which is secreted by the uterus becomes viscous and it prevents the passage of sperm into the uterine tube. The uterus is held in place by the support of several ligaments: the broad ligaments, uterosacral ligaments, round ligaments, cardinal or lateral cervical ligaments. Carefully go through this picture and find out where are these ligaments which supports the uterus as well as the ovaries. This image also gives you an idea what are the ligaments important for the support of uterus and the ovaries. The structure of the wall of the uterus is very important. The wall of the uterus consists of three main layers. The outermost layer is the perimetrium. It is a serous membrane which lines the outside of the uterus. And the middle one is the myometrium. As the term myo is there, this part is formed by muscles. The myometrium consists of several layers of smooth muscles and imparts the bulk of the uterine wall, the major part of the uterine wall. The contractions of these smooth muscles during childbirth help to force the fetus out of the uterus. The innermost layer of the uterine wall is the endometrium. It is highly vascularized mucosa which lines the inside of the uterus. If there is an fertilized oocyte or the zygote is there, then the zygote implants within this tissue layer. When we are talking about the structure of endometrium, it is consists of two layers. That is, the innermost layer which is facing the uterine lumen is called stratum functionalis. It is the functional layer which is shed during each menstruation. And the outermost layer called stratum basalis. This basal layer is permanent and it generates each new stratum functionalis after each menstruation. In this picture, you can see these two layers as zona basalis and zona functionalis. So, the stratum functionalis is removed from the body during each menstruation. So, in each menstruation cycle, this zona functionalis goes through two main phases, that is, the proliferative phase and the secretory phase. During proliferative phase, that is, just after a menstruation shed of this layer, the glands and blood vessels scatter here and there within this layer. The number of glands and blood vessels are little and there is no branching. But at the end of this proliferative phase, new glands start to form and the endometrium starts to get thickened. And then it reaches the secretory phase. There, glands are enlarged and they have branches. During this phase, this stratum functionalis preparing for the implantation. If there is no implantation, then endometrium or this stratum functionalis breakdowns and menstruation begins. This picture gives you the idea about the endometrial cycle or the menstrual cycle. You will learn this cycle in depth in physiology lessons. Here, I just wanted to give you just the basic idea. So this is as the revision or the summary of the lecture. So you can see the structures of female reproductive system, the ovaries, uterine tube, uterus, and the ligaments. This image is a cross-section of each of these organs. This is the end of the first part of this lecture. We will continue during next part. So this is the continuation of the lecture on human reproductive system. This is the second part of female reproductive system. The next organ of the female reproductive system is the vagina or the birth canal. It serves in two ways. The first one is as the passageway for a newborn infant, and also as the site for depository for semen during sexual intercourse. The upper region of the vagina surrounds the lower part of the cervix, and this joint creates a recess called fornix. The lower region of the vagina opens to the outside of the body through vaginal orifice. There is a thin membrane called hymen which covers this orifice. In this picture, you can see the vagina, how it connects with the cervix, and how it opens to the outer environment. Also, how the thin membrane hymen covers the orifice. When we are considering the wall of the vagina, it consists of three layers. The outermost layer, the fibroelastic adventitia or the cover, and middle one, the smooth muscle muscularis, and the innermost layer is a stratified squamous epithelium. This is the microscopic anatomy of the vaginal wall. It is consists of three layers, and the innermost layer is the mucosa. It is lined by stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. The importance here is that as it is a canal which opens the body cavity to the outer environment, and also it is a canal which is subject to frequent wear and tear. Therefore, it is lined by a stratified epithelium. But as it is inside the body and also it is covered with a fluid layer, there is no risk of dehydration. Therefore, it is not keratinized. Therefore, vagina is covered by a stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. Let's see what are the external genitalia of female reproductive system. There are several structures which form this external genitalia. When we are taking all these structures together, we call the external genitalia vulvae or pudendum. The first one is mons pubis. It is a region of adipose tissue above the vagina which is covered with hair. Below the mons pubis, you can find labia majora. These are two folds of adipose tissue which lies each side of the vagina. Hair and sebaceous glands are present in labia majora. Developmentally, the labia majora are similar to male scrotum. In this image, you can see the location of mons pubis and labia majora as well as other structures. There inside the labia majora, we can see two smaller folds of skin. These two folds of skin we call labia minora. The region between the labia minora is called vestibule. In the vestibule, you can see vaginal orifice or the vaginal opening, the urethral opening, and the ducts from the greater vestibular glands. These vestibular glands secrete mucus, which is important for the lubrication of the region of vestibule. There are two main types of glands in external genitalia of female reproductive system. That is vestibular glands, or we call it Bartholin's gland, and paraurethral glands. These vestibular glands are similar to the bulbourethral glands in males, and the paraurethral glands are similar to the prostate gland in males. Both of these glands are important to produce mucus in order to facilitate the copulation process. The clitoris is a very small mass of erectile tissue and nervous tissue which is located in the upper end of the vestibule. The extensions of the skin folds of labia minora joins with each other at the clitoris, and they form prepuce, or a fold of skin which covers the clitoris. Clitoris is similar to the penis of male reproductive system. The perineum, it is the area between the vagina and the anus. When we are considering all these external genitalia together, the mons pubis, hair, the sebaceous gland secretions, mucus, the labia minora and majora, which are skin folds which are surrounding vaginal opening, are important to protect the inside of the body. Actually, that is, they covering vaginal opening in order to prevent enter the foreign agents such as bacteria and other foreign matters into the body. Through vagina, they can enter into the uterus. So it should be prevented. That is because uterus is the location where the new organism or the embryo is developing. When we are considering about the process of oogenesis, there in males, they are able to produce sperms throughout their reproductive lives. But in females, they only produce a limited number of egg cells during their life. During early fetal development, these germ cells migrate into their ovaries and start to differentiate into oogonia. So this picture gives you the idea how this oogonium is produced from primordial germ cells in the embryo. Then these oogonia divide by mitosis for the next few months, and some differentiate into primary oocytes. By fifth month of the embryo, there are about 7 million primary oocytes, but most of them will degenerate during the next 2 months of the development of the embryo. Then the remaining primary oocytes become surrounded by a single layer of squamous epithelial cells which are called follicle cells. Then this is called primordial follicle. But still, the degeneration of these primary oocytes continues. Therefore, at birth, only around 1 million primordial follicles are remained, and at puberty, only 400,000 are remained. Out of them, only 400 or up to 500 will reach the maturity. After puberty, monthly changes occur in woman's reproductive life. They occur in ovaries as well. So each month, the follicular stimulating hormone stimulates these primordial follicles to grow and mature. This phase is called follicular phase. Due to the stimulation of luteinizing hormone, the egg is finally released. This process is called ovulation. After ovulation, the remains of the follicle are transformed into a structure called corpus luteum. This phase is called the luteal phase. If a pregnancy occurs, it produces the progesterone in order to maintain the wall of the uterus during the early period of the development of the embryo. If there is no fertilization occur, then the corpus luteum start to break down. This degeneration finally results a clump of scar tissue called corpus albicans. So this image gives you the idea, the process of oogenesis as well as follicle development. So go through it carefully and get an idea. Mammary glands are also considered as a part of female reproductive system. They are modified sweat glands which are present in both males and females. But mammary glands are functional only in females, that is, in response to the hormone called prolactin. The main function of mammary glands is production and ejection of milk. The milk is secreted by alveoli cells. These cells get together and form clusters called lobules. Each of these lobules drain into lactiferous ducts. Lactiferous ducts become dilated to form lactiferous sinuses. Lactiferous sinuses lies just beneath the areola, that is the blackish area around the nipple. Areola is the site of milk accumulation during nursing or breastfeeding. Areola is the pigmented portion of the breast with a protruding nipple. Nipple contains the openings of the lactiferous ducts. What are the hormones-related female reproductive system? The anterior pituitary gland releases luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone, which control sex cells maturation and also production of female sex hormones. Other than that, ovaries secrete estrogen. It is a group of hormone and the main hormone is estradiol. They have a number of functions such as enlargement of vagina, uterus, uterine tubes and ovaries, and also they are responsible for secondary sex characteristics in females. So this is the end of the female reproductive system.